But if that's not the case, then God has forever changed himself. The Godhead, the triune God, has forever humanized himself through incarnation. And forever, God is humanized. If we talk about a second person of the Trinity that was incarnated, well, that incarnate second person of the Trinity still exists to this day. It's the exalted, glorified man, Christ Jesus, who is at the right hand of God, right? Serving as God's priest and king. And so God's eternal intent, we can say God hasn't changed in that his eternal design was to create a creature in and through whom he could take up his own existence in order to be present in, operative in, related to the rest of his creation. In other words, incarnation was God's eternal design, and therefore he hasn't changed. He hasn't changed in his will, his purpose, his design. But nonetheless, within the being of God, you do have this change of God taking up human existence everlastingly. And ultimately, that's even the goal that he has for us. Not that we're incarnate as Jesus is, or somehow we're divine in the exact same way that he is. But if Jesus is the beginning of a new human race that is defined by human beings in relation to God such that they are in him and he is in them, this, as you say, ontological, that means in the essence or the substance or the being. If God's design is to be ontologically joined to humanness in his Son, and we are now sharers in that life of Jesus, taken up in the life of God by the Spirit, then in a very real way, this principle of incarnation has its ultimate realization in a whole human race in which it can be said, they are in God and God is in them. This is the upper room discourse, right? And so in that way, we aren't God as Jesus is, but Peter says we are made to be partakers in the divine nature. This was God's eternal design. So it doesn't lessen God. It doesn't cheapen God. It doesn't somehow, make us be equal with God as human beings or creatures or whatever. But nonetheless, this was God's intent. So in this thing of incarnation, we see ultimately what God's design was for the whole creation. And we are sharers in that. We are partakers in the divine nature in that way. So from one vantage point, yes, a very profound change that endures forever. But as this was forever God's eternal design, and as it does not change his essential deity, he remains who he is, even though he has now taken up human existence to himself. We have to hold those things together. And I don't know that there's a whole lot more that we could say theologically, because this is where the Bible leaves it.
Yeah, like these last two questions too really are kind of part A and part B is based on what you've just shared.